All right, welcome back to the podcast. So this week's guest is one that I've known for a couple of years now, Nick Spisak. I'm going to let him get into his backstory here shortly. But the short of it is, Nick and I met in the e-commerce world. He was one of the first members of the Wholesale Network Mastermind. He went from corporate software developer to e-com entrepreneur, recently left the 9 to 5 a few months back to pursue e-commerce full time. And he also happens to know quite a lot about AI in the world of development and automation. So bringing him on today to talk through some of the opportunities that he's seeing in AI, talking about hacks for small business owners, ways to make recurring revenue with AI, and getting people started and learning about this stuff the right way. So Nick, excited to have you on today, man. Looking forward to talking through some of these things.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back on the podcast, Corey.
Yeah, definitely. And for those who are curious, you can go back and listen to episode 40. That was the last time that we had Nick on the show, episode 40. And that was back when the podcast was called the Amazon Wholesale Podcast. So that one goes deep into Nick's Amazon background. But today we're going to talk more about the other side of his background. So, Nick, do you want to just give the brief elevator pitch on your story?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up as doing the reseller back in the day on eBay, and then fast forward a couple decades, right? So we was right around COVID time. I started being able to utilize some of my background in IT. I worked in corporate as a developer, a system engineer, and an architect for 15 years. And I used that experience really to find products that were cheap online or in demand and then reselling them on Amazon. And that's, like you mentioned, that's how we got connected. As the years kind of went on, started learning about different aspects of things, whether it was logistics or brand management. And we're still doing that today, right? So nothing's really changed on that front. What has changed is applying the skill set of not just software engineering, but being able to utilize some of these artificial intelligence technologies in a practical way. And as we kind of go through the podcast today, the intention will be it's very simple. It's definitely one of those things where you can make these topics seem very complicated, but they don't need to be. So I love to kind of talk through some of the practical ways of how we're starting to utilize AI and the direction that we're moving forward going into 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, and that's a great point because I mean that's my mission as well at the end of the day to simplify these things for the everyday small business owner and make it more approachable and more easy to implement, right? So with that, I mean let's start with maybe your most actionable tip when it comes to starting to implement some of these AI tools for the everyday small business owner.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just kind of getting into the ecosystem. So you're going to hear all of these different terms around ChatGPT and Perplexity and Google Gemini and all of those items. And at first, it can seem super overwhelming. So I would say the very first thing, if you're AI curious and starting to kind of think through, because no matter where you go, if you're on the news, you're on social media, you're hearing all this buzz around AI and potentially even have some fear of missing out around it. So I would say the very first practical tip is literally just taking a day where instead of doing a Google search, just use ChatGPT to ask the same exact question that you would have already done. And another one that you can do with that is all of these AI providers, they have something that you can put onto your phone. So now you're in a position where you can literally have conversations to be able to figure out something of interest. And it doesn't even need to be in the professional context. It can just be something that you're like, hey, I'm curious about a specific topic. Like, what should I make for dinner tonight based on the ingredients that I have in my cabinet? And you'll be shocked at what you can learn about some of these things without it really having to do too much to kind of really dive into the deep end of it.
Yeah, it's true how just learning how to integrate it into your life as it already is really the biggest immediate unlock. So instead of using Google, asking ChatGPT and just starting to think to use it for things that you wouldn't normally think to use it for. I think that's a great example where, again, I can't tell you how many times I've got a random assortment of groceries in the fridge and I can just take a picture of everything and ask ChatGPT, what can I make based on this, what I have? And it'll put something together and then I don't have to think about it, right? So that's just a very simple everyday use case that, I mean, anybody could apply and just, it's starting to think with that mentality of
Yep.
just when can I implement it into my daily life. Now, And that's great, and that's a great way for, someone who's completely inexperienced to get started. And for those who are willing to spend even a little bit of time learning these concepts and learning how to use this technology, I think there's such a large knowledge gap as it stands right now. There's people that know a little bit about AI are so much farther ahead than people who know nothing. And I think there's a large amount of people that still know nothing. So, one thing that I know that I'm focused on, and Nick, I know you and I have been working together on some of these things, are doing essentially AI assessments for people and for small business owners. So, because one of the things that we've heard, some of the feedback that we've gotten from small business owners is that they don't know what they don't know. They know that they need to implement AI, and they know that there's things that they're doing that are inefficient. But it's like they'll tell me, "Hey, I want you to come just sit down and watch me work for a day. Can you just come shadow me for a day and watch everything that I do?" And obviously that doesn't scale. So we're putting together essentially an AI assessment, or an audit, for lack of a better term, to audit what people are doing in their everyday work scenarios, and then put together a list of recommendations on how AI can be implemented or how things can be automated to make that workflow more efficient. Right. So that's kind of one of the things that we're doing to make money in this AI day and age.
Yeah, and I think a couple things to hit on, especially for small business owners, right? If you're feeling that FOMO, the fear of missing out, like, oh, I'm not using AI in my business, there's an overarching question to ask yourself, and that's generally where it is where is the return on investment going to be on these? And a lot of the shiny object syndrome with AI right now are based on first principles that have been around for decades, right? And it's been, how do I eliminate waste? And how do I grow my business, right? So we think of AI with that acronym as artificial intelligence, but before even getting to that type of tier, think about what the true meaning of it: information and automation, right? So same acronym, but before we even get to artificial intelligence, how do I get the information I need to be able to make good business decisions, and what aspects of my business can I make more lean so that way it's able to be standardized and then eventually automated? So, kind of, Corey, kind of getting into what you were talking about with these assessments, a lot of times with assessments, it's just looking at what's the existing process, what's the current state of that look like, following Elon's methodology of eliminating waste, right? Taking everything back to ground zero and challenging, okay, why is it set up this way? Are there areas that we can take out of that existing process flow, and visualizing the work? What are the steps that are there? Can I teach myself? Can I teach my employees? Is it too complicated? So those are really the fundamental steps with these assessments, is getting back to these principles of being able to say, hey, how does it work today? And being willing and open to challenge if it's really the right direction to do it, or if the process can be made simpler.
And I love that we go about it that way, right? Because with that framework, you're basically saying we're not going to just implement AI into a task that isn't yet optimized. First thing we've got to do is we've got to look at that task and make sure, are we doing that task in the most efficient manner possible? If we're not, well, we cut out the waste, like you said, and we implement steps that make it more efficient. And then once you have that finished product, which is the now fully optimized task, then you can look at that task and say, okay, now it's time to implement AI. Or, hey, actually, now we can automate this step here. But you can't just jump straight into AI or jump straight into automation without fixing the underlying process first. And what you're saying we do is, one, we do the audit, right? And then two, once we figure out what we can do, then we actually go and set it up for success by, cutting out the waste and fixing the underlying process first. And then we make recommendations on, well, hey, here's where we can use AI, or here's where we can automate. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and like going back to the original piece, right? What is the ROI for this? So the best way to measure it is, you can do these in three different ways. You can look at it from an effectiveness position, which is really how much money can I make by utilizing this updated process, right? So those would be growth oriented automation opportunities or AI opportunities. There's an efficiency angle, right? So a KPI around how many hours saved. Now you can look at a process and say, okay, I eliminated this amount of waste. I automated this specific aspect of my existing business process. And now I can tie with an actual quantitative result of here's how many hours that's saved. And if this was done manually, this is how much it would have cost in current state to do that. And then the third method is around experience. And that's really around, it's a harder one to measure, but it's around looking at your customer base and say, did I increase the experience that they provide? Whether that's
Right.
onboarding into a service or product that you offer, measuring that with a net promoter score. So there's those are really the three levers that you can pull when you're starting to think through, okay, well, what do I actually want to do with this? It's either is it an effectiveness based metric where maybe we were looking at it from a growth angle? Is it an efficiency based metric where we want to look at it from hours saved? Or is it an experience based angle where we're saying, hey, how do I make my existing customer base have a better result of the products and services that we're offering?
Right. So you're optimizing for one of those three things, right? Either time saved, additional revenue generated, or increase in customer experience. And
Yeah.
so that's the ROI that you measure the work on. Because again, to go and fix a process that is inherently incredibly inefficient is not going to be cheap, right? We're talking a significant investment. But when you tie it back to, well, yeah, it's going to cost you, let's say 10K, but then you look at, oh, well, it actually saves our number two person in the company 15 hours a month and we pay him 200K a year, right? So
Mhm.
actually, we're making that money back and then some is how it pencils out in a lot of cases. So I love that. And again, to be able to get to the process work, you first got to do the audit, which is why I'm we're obviously incredibly bullish on the audit as being kind of the entry point product in and of itself for getting to do some of this higher level process work. So we've got a couple of those in the pipeline right now. We're doing one for a realtor. We're doing one for a large, like $25 million a year box manufacturer. We've got a couple more in the pipeline. And if you're interested in one of those audits for your small business, feel free to reach out. You can email me, Corey@CoreyGannum.com, and we can talk that through with you. But Nick, one other point that I want to highlight in terms of this whole journey that we're on, right? Because I'd say, again, you and me are ahead of you're ahead of 99% of people. I'm probably ahead of 90% of people when it comes to knowledge of this stuff. But at the end of the day, we're not experts, right? I think the key that people need to realize is that you really just need to be one step ahead of your customer if you choose to sell this stuff or if you choose to, implement this stuff for other people as a business. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. Like, is it really as simple as just staying one step ahead of the other of your customers? I mean,
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the fundamental item is learning how to learn, right? So, and that's just a principle for any business. If you're a business owner, if you're a decision maker in an existing business, the continuously being, okay, well, what's the next thing that we need to be thinking about? What are the
right,
contingencies we're putting in there? And that's no different than decades of centuries of establishing businesses, but we're just in a very unique position now where the leverage of using AI capabilities allows us to get to those outcomes so much quicker.
right,
And that's the big piece is it's looking at it from the lens of how much more output and getting to our desired outcome can I use by leveraging this versus someone that's not using the capability. And that's really the opportunity cost at the end of the day. If you're not looking at these items, somebody else that is your competitor or would be a potential competitor is looking at it. So it's definitely getting to your point of just staying not just one step ahead of the customer, but also one step ahead of your competition that's also looking at this.
right. Absolutely. And again, in my experience, all you have to do is I put in 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, most days of just either practicing with some of these tools or building certain automations or just bottom line tinkering with this stuff, right? And just doing that for 15 to 30 minutes a day, most days is going to put you ahead of most people. So that's really what it comes down to. Now, Nick, another question that I had for you, because I know there's people in the audience that they're building businesses, right? Maybe they're younger or they've got a couple of businesses under their belt and they're looking for that next one to start. I think a lot of people are wondering how to make money in AI, but specifically recurring revenue, right? I'm obsessed with the concept of recurring revenue. So what are some of the best ways that you've seen people making recurring revenue, whether it's monthly or annually, when it comes to AI?
Yeah, start with the problem you have, right? I'll give a practical example in my in one of my businesses right now. So it's staying within the Amazon space, right? Where we do growth partnership with existing brands, and one of our brands has an issue with minimum advertised pricing. So I used AI specifically to code a mini app that its whole purpose was to go out and look at their listings and find out what was the amount of violation per offer that was there, and more importantly, how much revenue was that coming at a cost on a monthly basis. So when we do our quarterly reports with that brand around financials, that's a very clear, going back to that ROI equation, that's a very clear way for it to say, hey, this is the amount of money monthly of lost opportunity as a result of the price being below minimum advertised. Here
Right.
is your brand degradation over an annualized basis of what this looks like. So that was one very practical way to be able to say what's an existing pain point that I had with working with our brand partners to be able to show value, and we utilized AI as a way to code the app quickly to be able to show some value on that very specific action.
And then do you have that basically selling as a subscription to these brands you're saying, and that's how you generate the MRR?
So we haven't used the MRR specifically on that one yet, but that's a forward feature. So basically for our brand partners, it's a free service for being customers with us, but it's also an MRR potential with either brands that don't necessarily want a brand partner, but they
Right.
would be willing to
Like a
have
standalone.
a standalone for that. So that's generally the idea here, is using it as building blocks, solve the specific pain point for yourself first, and then see, can you take that as a productized service model to be able to generate the monthly reoccurring from there.
So, okay, so you're saying it's basically it's like, hey, find a problem and create a little lightweight tool, more or less almost like a mini SaaS that can solve that problem, that if it solves it for you, it's going to solve it for other people and you can monetize that, right? So, I think that makes perfect sense. That's a great way to make recurring revenue with AI. And I'm just looking at some of your notes here too. So one thing I want to point out is I think when you think about recurring revenue, I think you can justify the $1,000 per month, $2,000 per month, $5,000 per month price tag if your service is making your client a lot of money, right? Because at the end of the day, there's automations or there's AI services that are going to make the client money, and then there's services on the other end of the spectrum that are going to save them time, right? Or save them money. And when it comes to savings, you can only save so much, but when it comes to making more money, you can help them make an unlimited amount of money. So I think if you want to make the highest amount of recurring revenue with AI, it's got to be a service that makes the client money, and obviously the more money it makes them, the more you can charge per month. So that's why these like lead gen services or these marketing automation companies can charge 10, 15, 20,000, $50,000 a month retainers. It's because they're generating 4 or 5 times that in revenue for their clients, right? So I think people just got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and especially depending on where your skills are, right? If you're more naturally inclined in the sales and marketing side, the growth angle of that is going to be a more natural fit. If you're more systems oriented or systems focused, the efficiency side may become as a natural fit. But knowing all three of the pillars is a fundamental skill that as you're looking through these opportunities, you can rate them based off of an effort and impact analysis, which is a key part of those assessments, right? What is an outcome of an assessment? It's saying, here's all of the opportunities that we could do. Which of them should we do? And the effort and impact says, okay, if there's something that's going to have a high impact to one of those growth lever, right? Growth, efficiency, or experience, and the effort to complete that at the end of the day is minimal, that's going to be your low hanging fruit. Those are the ones that you tackle right away. And it's very easy to sell those types of items. So thinking about those in visual sense of being able to put them and map them for a customer is such a valuable it's such a valuable way of thinking, because it gives them a very objective way to be able to make a decision based on your recommendations as the quote unquote expert in that AI space.
Right. No, and that's a really good insight, right? Is at the end of the day, it's got to be ranked on a scale of effort to impact, right? Like you said, and it's the things that are currently high impact but low effort, we need to just go ahead and automate those entirely or get those outsourced entirely, because that can open up a lot of additional opportunities for that you to then reallocate that time to stuff that matters more.
Yep.
Now, I want to touch on a few really tactical tips and tricks that people can implement right away. So there's one that I want to touch on that I feel like I've been screaming from the rooftops for the last few months. And until everybody I know has downloaded this app, I'm not going to stop talking about it. But my first of the 3 AI hacks that I'm going to share is called Whisper Flow. So it's WISPR Flow. And it is a basically a talk to text app. So you just hold down a button on your keyboard and you can talk and it will just type out what you're saying. But it's actually good. So think if Siri worked and knew how to format and knew context. That's how good this tool is. And it saved me, or I guess it even quantifies for you. It'll quantify the amount of time saved, or I guess how much faster your typing is when you use Whisperflow versus typing it out yourself by hand. And my typing, quote unquote, because all I'm doing is talking, is I think 5 times faster when I use Whisperflow, and it's completely free. So it's been a game changer as far as just saving a ton of time.
Yep, I would definitely endorse that as well. When Whisper Flow came out, it's has a very generous free tier. So just
Yep.
utilize it to its full capacity. They also have a mobile app, which is really nice. So not only can you use it on the desktop, but you can also use it with. I have an iPhone, so with the iPhone itself, there's a app you can download within that, and then your keyboard you just toggle it over, and you can do the same transcription service. So super easy hack to be able to just have conversation with what you're already going to be doing anyway.
Yep. And it takes about a week to get used to, because at first it's like you're trying to talk your text out and you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, you're like, wait, is that right? Like, do I say it that way? But after about a week, you get used to it and you start typing. Again, you're just talking, but you're typing so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one that I have is using connectors in ChatGPT. So pretty much everybody listening to this is probably using ChatGPT in some capacity. What they probably don't realize is that there's something in ChatGPT called connectors, which is basically a way of ChatGPT to connect to some of the tools that you use throughout your everyday work, right? So, for example, it's got connectors to Gmail, it's got connectors to your calendar, to Google Drive, to Outlook if you're using Microsoft. So you can go in and enable those connectors, and then you can talk to ChatGPT as if it can take actions in those other tools, right? So, for example, you can talk to your email if you have the Gmail connector enabled. So you could say, hey, please summarize all the emails that came in today. And ChatGPT will be able to summarize your email inbox. So using those connectors inside ChatGPT is a great way to get access to the other tools that you use with the power of ChatGPT included.
Yeah, a little bit of additional context too on that. What we're seeing in the market is for OpenAI specifically, they're supposed to be going generally available by year end with GPT apps. So they originally did custom GPTs was the first iteration of this. Now apps are exactly what you mentioned, Corey, right? So there's a couple that you'll see already allow listed on ChatGPT. A couple of them are like Spotify, Zillow, Canva, where in natural language, if you're just having conversation with it, it'll already make a recommendation to go ahead and pull up those specific services. So think of it kind of like the Apple App Store, but for AI, and with 800 million viewers that are using it on a regular basis. It's a really interesting opportunity, especially if you have a particular service that would you integrate natively.
Yep. Yeah, the OpenAI is basically turning into the Apple of the AI world, right? They're owning that app store, and there's going to be a lot of other additional connectors and apps built on top of ChatGPT. So those are just a few to start with.
Yep.
And then my third hack on my list here is using Loom for creating SOPs. So Loom is a tool that records your screen and your microphone. So it's just loom.com. It's completely free. If you get the free version, you can record videos up to 5 minutes. And it just makes it easy. You can one click record your screen and your camera and your microphone. So you'll just record yourself going through a task. And then you take that recording and you can upload it to Google Gemini, and then Google Gemini will watch the recording of you doing the task and then recommend ways to optimize that task and to automate that task. So that's a way to, one, record SOPs, and then two, have Google Gemini give you suggestions on how to optimize it. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone with that one there.
Yeah, definitely start thinking through what does your knowledge base look like? Because knowledge bases are going to be a critical, continue to be a critical point within the AI age, where not just is there the generally available information, but then there's all of your own private proprietary information that you want to give the AI context around how to be able to interpret it. And it's going to interpret that data much more effectively than you would if you were doing it manually. So having Loom on there is great because it's already going to give you those native transcripts, and supplementing it with the different large language models is a great way to be able to find some insights within the data that you already have as part of your standard operating procedures.
Absolutely. So those are three hacks that people can implement today and get value immediately. Now, Nick, let's say that somebody listening to this, again, maybe they've used ChatGPT, but that's about all they've gotten into. So I'd say I'd classify them as AI curious. So if someone's AI curious, where are you telling them to start?
Yeah, we kind of hit on it already, right? I would start with ChatGPT because it's the easiest to get started with. I would look at it in the same mindset as any other type of, like, if you were building a house, of using the right tool for the job. The same thing applies in the AI space. So as of time of recording, ChatGPT is going to be essentially your Swiss Army knife. It's going to be your general purpose type location to go. If you're looking for creative writing or coding, it's been doing great in that space, but also Claude by Anthropic has been an area for that. So taking a look at that for some of your copywriting type activities that you would be doing. If you're looking for real time insights, that's going to be Grok as of recording. Where you're looking for social media content, it's generally less censored in terms of being more raw in terms of the types of information you can get back, and Perplexity from a web or real time research. So the market's always changing, but the skills are going to be fundamental in that. If you can talk to it in natural language and think through, okay, as a business owner, how would I teach my employees? Use that same kind of mindset with talking to AI, being very deliberate in how you speak, being very deliberate in how you type, making sure to ask yourself the question, do I actually understand what I'm typing or saying right now? Because if I don't understand it, how is the AI going to know it? So come from that lens of just being very direct and very deliberate of how to do it, and that's a great way to kind of get started. And as you kind of get more familiar with it, it's going to be much more natural. You'll be utilizing it as essentially your research partner for any topic. In today's world, there's not, anytime I'm looking at something new, the very first thing I'm doing is pulling up the same type of question into each one of the providers and seeing what type of answers that it provides back to me. So
Right.
I'd say that's probably the first step if you're AI curious and you're a business owner looking to get into this, to start putting it into practice.
And one thing I love about that model, right, is that it's just forcing you to kind of get in the weeds and learn everything by hand. And I think that, again, just if you're just using ChatGPT at this point, there's so much more opportunity for you out there. So I think that's a great place to start. Now, what is a AI business model that you expect to flop? Because there's a lot of, I feel like, trendy businesses that are popping up around AI. You've got automation agencies, you've got, people being freelance developers, you've got people specializing in Zapier, you've got all these different business models cropping up. So which of those do you expect to just totally flop?
Anything that doesn't have really an established mode around it. So think of it as like your GPT wrappers, things where you have, a commoditized chat interface, those types of items like that, right? Anything that any of the big tech firms can very easily generalize and put as a feature or capability in their existing suite. So any of those ones, it's not necessarily that they're going to flop in the sense of they won't be successful, but they're going to be successful by the large, well invested technology companies, the Googles of the worlds, the Open AIs of the worlds, ones that have a lot of funding and very skilled engineers that are developing these products and capabilities. The areas that I think will likely be very bullish on are going to be in the niches, right? Some of the boring business angles that can utilize, they already have established customers where the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze for big tech, or they don't have the
Right.
experience in that area. That's where folks are going to flourish. Anything where you can be on the forefront of voice, vision, or hardware. So as software continues to become more commoditized, there's a pendulum swing coming back to hardware. So think through over the next 2 years, right? We're already starting to see the movement toward where humanoids are becoming actually practical, right? We're
Right.
starting to see these demos, these prototypes that are there. All right, well, if I'm a business owner and I'm starting to think through, well, how is this going to affect me? There's probably going to be a nice gap in the market for a period of time where, okay, well, if I'm in a traditional business where I have labor that has repetitive tasks, can those repetitive tasks now be done by a trained robot? It sounds
Right.
crazy right now, but it's not that far
In
from.
2 to 3 years, I bet a lot of that's going to be happening.
Yeah, exactly. So you have now, you also will have aspects where some of these things still require a remote person to be able
Right.
to learn it. Well, if you have overseas talent that knows how to do it, what's
Yep.
keeping you from that model? So I think there is going to be an interesting area where, okay, now I have hardware. I have leverage through the potential of these robot capabilities. All right, well, that's still a little bit further out there. What can I do to set myself up for success? Learn my existing processes, learn where I can optimize for them in today's world. Think through where this is going from a roadmap perspective, and start setting yourself up for making sure to know this. So when the opportunity is there, now you already know, okay, now this is how I'm going to deploy this from a practical lens.
Right. Exactly. It's just knowing, basically keeping your eyes on the forefront of what's happening in this world so you know where to implement and you know where to pivot
Yep.
because this stuff does change so quickly. So I think all of that is fantastic advice. I think a lot of it, that the biggest highlight for me again is talking about the audits and really everything that we talked about, whether it's what we're planning to do or what we see other people doing successfully. It all starts with an audit in some capacity. It's uncovering what is the opportunity here first and foremost, and from there being able to decide your next course of action. So that seems to be the right direction for a lot of folks, including ourselves. So with that, Nick, we'll wrap things up there. Where do you want people to follow you or to go interact with you in any way?
Yep. So on all socials, I am primarily on X. It's Nick Spisak _ and that's generally where I'll be putting out AI content, not just for boring businesses, but general ones around technology and the tech background. So always putting out different things that we're learning along the way, and happy to connect with folks.
Yeah, Nick puts out really good content over there on X. So go follow him there. Nick, thank you so much for the time. Guys, if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to leave a rating and a review. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like the video, and we'll be back next week with another episode just like this. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey.